of the other big arguments that's happening right now is on defence. We're delighted to welcome good friend of the station, Mark Francois, Shadow Defence Minister. Mark, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely to speak to you. I just want to start with the defence thing. It's your brief, and then if you don't mind, we can talk about loads. Sir Keir Starmer has been warned by his own MPs that he risks damaging Britain's relationship with the US if our country does not spend more on defence. He'd made that promise of GDP 2.5% until 2030. He's now sort of rowing back, and I'm not sure when it's going to be. You've got the incoming Trump, who I think very fairly and correctly says, the rest of you don't pay as much as I do. I'm not wiping your backsides forever. What's the Tory party's view, Mark?
Well, look, Starmer never put a date on it. That's the fundamental difference. We said 2.5% by 2030. So there'd be a steady increase in the defence budget between now and then. It would, in real terms, over those years, over £20 billion extra. Labour won't put a date on it. And until they put a date on it, it's funny money. You can't actually run the defence budget. And it's worse because they're threatening to spend £9 billion on renting back the Chagos Islands and Diego Garcia that we already own. Jerry, it's a bit like saying we pay Argentina £9 billion in order to rent back the Falkland Islands.
Mate, I don't mean to be disrespectful to your profession, and certainly it isn't aimed at you, but every day that goes by, I realise how many goddamn incompetent MPs there are. Starmer, in his usual sort of, let's have a quango, was appointed Lord Robertson of Port Ellen, wherever that is, the former head of NATO, to carry out a strategic defence review. No, we've got a really small army, no tanks, no personnel. Our standing in the world is beginning to be laughed at. Commit to the money. No, the Tories left a black hole. Oh, we can't say black hole because that'll offend somebody. That's the world we live in now, Mark. It's ludicrous, man.
Well, look, don't take it from me, take it from the Times. This is their leader, their editorial today.
Yeah.
It's entitled Indefensible.
Yeah.
I'll just read you the first sentence. It sometimes appears that Labour's defence policy involves not so much trying to scare Britain's enemies as hoping they will laugh themselves to death. That's the Times, right? But the really serious side to this is we've got a war in Ukraine. We've got massive instability in the Middle East. We've got China effectively threatening Taiwan. Of course we must increase our defence spending. The first duty of government, above all others, is the defence of the realm. I say that as the son of a D-Day veteran. But Labour, because of the economic chaos they've already created, they are terrified they'll have to have an emergency budget on the 26th of March when we get the OBR estimate. And because of that, they won't commit to anything. So the review's complete. Lord Robertson has completed his work. The Prime Minister saw it in December. He's seen it again earlier this month. And they're saying we might get the outcome in the spring. And some people are saying it could even be later than that. So waiting for the work's done, but they won't put the money to go with it. So waiting for their defence review is a bit like waiting for Godot.
What do you make of the impact that this will have, as the report talked about today, relations with the US? We've seen a man, love him or loathe him, who's come in and has grabbed the bull by the horns on several fronts, and he ain't going to back down on this. I actually find myself agreeing with him about NATO, to be honest. It seems America has always spent more money, and he says he's not going to do that anymore. What are your thoughts on Trump vis-a-vis Starmer?
Well, despite, this loving on the phone call, which is carefully scripted to avoid...
He's playing him, Mark. Trump's playing Starmer like a good one.
Look, we all know, it's an open secret that Team Trump doesn't think much of Team Starmer, right? You can spin it any way you like. Everybody knows that. And, Trump on defence spending has been consistent. He often uses this analogy of a golf club. If you join a golf club, you have to pay the membership fee. And I agree with him. And when he was saying in his first presidency we should spend at least 2% of GDP, there are only 5 European NATO members that did. We were one, by the way. Now there are 23. So you could argue that he has been winning the argument. He is plain speaking. Some people like it, some people don't. America spends about 3.5% of GDP on defence. Poland spends more than 4%. So you could say they're setting an example. We were pledged to spend at least 2.5%. And again, at the risk of hammering the nail, we put a date on it so the MOD could plan. Labour won't give us the money and they won't give us the date.
Russell Quirk is with me. You're writing something furiously down. What do you want to ask Mark? You know
yes,
each other.
Mark, yes, we do. He's a fellow Essexonian. So, Mark is in a constituency about 10 miles up the road from me and has been, I think you've been the constituency MP for Raleigh and Wickford, Mark, for about, what, 23, 24 years?
23 years.
23 years. So can I ask you a question about something a bit more closer to home, council tax? You will remember, and I'm sure you've seen the memes that are travelling around social media right now, where Keir Starmer only a few months ago said under a Labour government, council tax would not increase. And now we hear that there are some councils, and I hope not in Essex, but there may be, that are going to increase council tax by between 10 and 25%. So I guess, Mark, two questions. One, I hope that Basildon and I think Rochford, which are the two councils in your constituency, are not going to do that. But what's your response to that, given the, should we call it a fib? The fib that Keir Starmer told in order to get elected, the reality now being for your poor constituents and others, something very, very different indeed.
Well, it is a sort of sub-fib within a grander fib. Rachel Reeves, I think it was the 28th of May, so a week into the election, famously gave the speech about economically what an incoming Labour government would do. And she famously said, you remember the words, all of our plans are fully costed and fully funded, and she said just after that, so there'll be no need for a Labour government to raise taxes. Well, other than the 40 billion they raised them by in the budget, there was nothing in the Labour manifesto about taking the winter fuel allowance away from up to 10 million pensioners. So the council tax fib, I'm afraid, is one of multiple fibs, and I'm choosing my words carefully. But look, Labour got just under 12,000 votes in my constituency, but you can't find a Labour voter now for love nor money.
Mark, can I just ask? Can I ask you for an overview? We hear defence, they won't commit to 2.5. Today we hear that migration will push Britain's population to an astonishing 72.5 million. We seem to have a government, and I blame your guys as well, nobody seems to want to be doing anything. I'll take you back to Trump. Today, so angry is he with government officials in his own offices, apparently, who won't implement what he wants, he's going to sack them. We need to deal with migration. We need to deal with defence. There are many things in this country, and all we get today is a report from this government that they want to bring back non-hate crimes, hurty words. I despair, man. The migration thing needs to be dealt with, and it is not being dealt with at all, is it?
Well, if you look at the votes, we had a plan, the Rwanda plan.
Yeah, but
hang on, Jeremy. Now look, some people liked it, some people didn't. But it was one more plan than Labour have got.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. All this, we're going to crush the gangs, hasn't worked at all. I completely get that. But what I say to all politicians, and I'll say it to you, Mark, we've spoken many times, at least you're good enough to come on. I'm very honest. I haven't heard enough from your leader. You'll all tell me she's working out what to say. I think you're having a march stolen by reform. But I would say to any politician on this show, the world's changed and the British public, I don't know whether it's COVID, I don't know whether it was the cost of living, I don't know what it is. You can label us far right for wanting to talk about extremists. You can call us far right for writing stuff on, hurty words. The British people are fed up. They're fed up of being at the back of the queue. They're fed up with people coming into this country and taking the PISS when good, hard-working, tax-paying British people are being screwed. And I do think that whichever party wants to gain the ear of the British people, they need to understand that actually some of the most outrageous things that Trump's doing, strangely, I'm going to say it, would work in this country right now, Mark Francois. They definitely would.
Well, Jeremy, let me try and answer you directly. Look, I fought a gruelling general election for 6 weeks. I was knocking on doors night after night, including after Rishi Sunak famously came back early from D-Day. You do not need to convince me that there are a lot of people out there who are very frustrated and angry, because I had if you forgive me, I had 6 weeks of it at very close range. I'm very pleased that in the end my constituents decided to re-elect me to carry on working for them. But believe you me, I got some pretty close range feedback on all of that, right? So I do think that we as politicians collectively need to start to address some of those frustrations. Now, Kemi Badenoch, give her due, put her hand up in a big speech a few weeks ago and said on immigration, we didn't do what we promised to do. She's taken over. She wasn't personally responsible for all those decisions. She's put her hand up and said, we should have done better. So, you know, I think there is some contrition there, and I hope that people will take her at her word.
All I would say is, listen, whether she has a plan or not, whether the Tory party has lost the ear or can regain the ear, whether reform's stolen your ground, whether Keir Starmer is the man or he isn't the man, to me, this country is at a juncture where people... They won't accept being told they're far right for daring to have an opinion. People will not accept constant tax rises, an army and a military that's pathetic. They won't accept where we're at. And I think they, you know, I listen to the Labour Party. All they say is we've had 14 years of incompetence. Before that, we heard about... there's so much that's wrong about this country, and I'm sure it's incredibly frustrating as a politician.
Because I know, you know, it's the nature of the beast. We're always tight for time.
We are. You know me better than most, my friend.
Now, our military are not pathetic, if I may. They're still man for man, woman to woman. You know,
but their numbers are pathetic. The numbers are pathetic.
But, you know, they need to be better equipped. That's why we announced that big increase in defence spending. Unfortunately, we lost the election, and Labour now, very frustratingly, will not match it. On reform, if I could just say this, because I hope this is an important point, so much of the animosity between ourselves and reform goes back to 2019, when when Nigel Farage, then the leader of the Brexit Party, stood down his candidates in Tory incumbent seats because he could see that after 3 years of trench warfare in Parliament, I saw night after night. I even wrote a book about it, still available on Amazon.
Brilliant.
And so you could argue that in 2019, Nigel calculated the only way we would really leave was if Boris won and won well. So you could argue he put country before party and stood down his candidates in incumbent seats, right? There was all this debate about should he have been given a knighthood or should he have been given a peerage. We didn't even give him lunch.
I completely agree. Listen,
No, this is really important. Sorry. We as a party didn't say thank you, and we should have done. And so much of the animus between us and reform goes back to that event, or rather that non-event.
Completely agree.
So whether or not there'll ever be some long-term I don't know, but there is still a lot of bad blood because we didn't say thank you when, to be fair, we should have done.
Right, listen, I need to break. I agree with you, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to wind Ryan up even more. As the Shadow Defence Minister yesterday, to symbolise how woke the Royal Navy is and has gone completely barking mad, it has been decided to rename the attack submarine worth billions from HMS Agincourt to HMS Achilles, because Agincourt will upset the French, allegedly, because that's where we beat them. Your response from a Conservative viewpoint, Mark Francois?
We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, which I believe comes from Henry V, which I believe was partly written about the Battle of Agincourt. Perhaps I could put it like that.
Very good. Lovely. Good man. Mark Francois on Talk Drive. Thank you very much, Steve.